Okay, so I'm Ainsley. I'm well within the boundaries of probably being a libertarian. I'm British, so my views are probably a little bit statist for the libertarian purists of the United States. I did start on the left of politics. I started as more or less a Marxist.
Good old Marxist.
Yeah, I started more or less on the far left of just like everyone must have the same, or else this. I bet I was Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. Good old Bernie right now.
I felt the burn before I knew who Bernie Sanders was, and I thought everything should be about social justice. And then I kind of left school, saw the world for what it was, and decided that, you know what, it's not all rainbows and
Unicorns.
unicorns. No,
Yeah,
it's
not a utopian society.
No, it's harsh. So I've moved to the right. I don't socially. I am quite liberal, but fiscally, I am more conservative than your average conservative. Probably, I'm in favour of a flat tax. I mean, very flat. There's zero if I could get away with it for income tax. But yeah, so we aim to provide an academic insight on the news, as well as just having just a bit of banter.
Yeah. I mean, I think there needs to be a little bit of banter involved, always in politics. I mean, you'll try and kill yourself if you don't.
Exactly.
So I'm Cody. Growing up, I remember sitting on the couch at school nights, next to my dad, watching Fox News, pretty much watching Hannity Combs show, watching them banter back and forth.
The O'Reilly factor.
Yeah, the O'Reilly factor, of course, back when O'Reilly was a little bit of a moderate. So obviously, from the first bit, you can grasp that I grew up in a conservative household in North Texas. As I grew up, I became more infatuated with politics, trying to understand the intricacies of how our world worked and what drives people from different sides of the spectrum. Eventually, I came to the conclusion that conservatism works, that conservatism is for the individual, that the state acts as though they can do all and see all. However, at the end of the day, it's the kid in his garage tinkering with electrical circuits and God knows what all to develop something that brings and springs society into the future, which theoretically and unfortunately the state cannot do and has never thoroughly done. Yes, I mean they've provided funds for IBM and Macintosh and different things of that sort. However, development and innovation is not one of the state's capital goods. Ainsley and I come from two completely separate countries, societies, and backgrounds. However, for the most part, we have come to the conclusion that conservatism works, that you are the driving force behind a nation, and that through the individual, we can develop and grow into a prosperous society. Obviously, as you watch this video, you may be wondering what makes us different than all the other podcasts being streamed on YouTube, Facebook, and other social media sites daily. The answer comes with a way in which we hope to conduct the podcast. Yes, this is going to be funny and ridiculous, but ultimately, it will be informative. We will strive to hold ourselves accountable to being open, providing you with facts, sources, and true academic work behind why we think that why we think we do on these topics, and stories that rock and shape our international community. Just think of our podcast as being what Obama imagined his White House in 2008 being: transparent. Ultimately, we want our viewers to be the most informed when it comes to politics. We don't want to be like all the other people surrounding politics with just BS and clickbait, but we want it to be thoroughly political and correct. Whether you agree with us or not, we want you to be informed on the stats and the different things on how this world works. Ultimately, from my point of view, I got sick and tired, or I'm still sick and tired of turning on the news and not only them being incorrect, but them arguing about why each other is incorrect. And I think, being a little bit more civil. Obviously, we're going to disagree on a few things, and probably a lot of things when it comes to the social spectrum. But as far as that, we want y'all to be informed, just like we are.
I think it's very important that we just we make it extremely clear that this is where we are although we have these opinions, that we are unbiased when it comes to finding out information. So we're not. So I'm not gonna go out of my way to find information that suits my narrative just because it suits my narrative.
Right.
Like, I'm happy to concede on some issues, which and I'm happy to go back if we make mistakes.
I think the overall point of our podcast is it just me being an academic as it is. Both of us are still in school.
Yeah.
But me being a post-grad, just really in the point of being objective, like taking, like, if we're going to approach this from a correct standpoint, we've got to approach this from the scientific method way of doing things. We've got to be objective coming into politics and knowing which works and which doesn't. And what kind of frustrates both of us is that right now the liberal narrative is dominating everything and saying that this works when in reality the numbers don't match up to what they're saying and how they're portraying things to be played. I think
100%. My reason probably for doing this is because especially among our age group, is that the narrative from the left dominates, and anyone with another opinion is branded with names that have lost the meaning at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we're trying to give that case to people our age, especially that it's okay to have conservative values.
Yeah, and to be fair as well, this isn't a you're wrong, we're right kind of thing either. This is, hey, we believe in conservative values and this is why, and we're going to kind of show that throughout the things that happen. And so from that, you're watching the Frontline podcast.
We're now just days from the most polarizing election in US history. No matter how the result goes, the outcome is going to be negative. Refugees living in France have now been moved out and are being used as political bait now more than ever, as the West tries to find a solution to a problem that it probably caused. And of course, everyone famous with a Twitter account continues to tell us how easy the solution is to all these problems, despite having absolutely zero credentials, but they continue to have a large influence on politics. All of this and more in the first ever edition of the Frontline podcast.
Well, election day, November 8th, well, or for Trump, November 18th, is exactly 1 week away from today. Honestly, this election cycle has lasted longer than my fat stage in high school. For what seems like the past 3 years, we have heard political banter and fallacies surrounding the 2016 election. Democrats attacking Republicans and vice versa. But what would American politics be without lies, deceit, and confusion? Well, it would be church camp. Since both camps have forgotten to focus on policies when running presidential campaigns, we must focus on something completely different. What we can and will attack is the number one disease in our democracy, election fraud. You know, that thing that Democrats believe is Santa Claus, but if he, Santa Claus, actually existed, as the Democrats and their media friends try and cover it up, we will help you understand why it actually exists, how it works, and why even a minute amount of voter fraud is detrimental to the democratic countries and societies. Moreover, the whole world now knows that the FBI and Director Comey are transparent and adhere to good investigative work, and as of last Friday have reopened the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email scandal.
So, again, starting here with election fraud. If you really want Hillary to win this election, you should do the honourable thing now. Say your last goodbyes to your old granny, your final farewell. And she'll be in a coffin, and there'll be a cross mark next to Hillary Clinton's name. At this point, I think Trump definitely over-exaggerated. I think it fits his narrative to start off with.
Well, not only does it fit his narrative, it fits the losing side's narrative completely. It says that not only are we losing, but we're losing illegitimately. Mm-hmm. And so I think both camps are doing exactly what we don't want our media to do, and that is being subjective instead of objective. So obviously, like what we were talking about in our opening statements, the point of this podcast. The point is the president of the United States comes out last week and says, there's never been an idea of voter fraud actually occurring in the United States elections, which is completely false. I mean, in 2008, Acorn, which is 501c3, actually had a bunch of people arrested and went on trial for voter fraud in favor of the Obama campaign. And so for him to say that doesn't happen or that doesn't occur is just completely false.
It's hypocritical of him because he knows and he oversaw 2008's campaign where there were people legitimately trying to especially take down John McCain voters and take advantage of those elderly, and it got Obama elected and it probably made no overall difference, but the point is that it's not the fact that election fraud goes on, because the scale at the point where there's election fraud, the scale is irrelevant. It's the fact that people are trying to undermine the democratic process.
Yeah, and I kind of lean to this. So there's something about our podcast as well is that when providing all of our information, we'll also provide the week-long written statements that we've put into the planning process of this podcast. And so basically what I'm trying to say here is that the obvious thing is that, okay, voter fraud might not take up a huge portion of the election, or it might not change who is winning and who isn't winning, but the point of it is are you really going to say that what do you say to these constituents who say, no, there really is voter fraud occurring, how can I trust my government now? At a point when the United States government is probably one of the most least trusted sovereign democracies in the world right now, besides the UK being with its Brexit vote. But at the same time is that it's not looking at whether or not it's going to change the election or not now. It's looking at how these people feel undermined, and are they really being undermined?
It's how that, especially when we're looking forward to January, February, March, after, if Clinton wins and these people have been sold this you were cheated out, the people who are going to vote Trump, who feel they're going to be cheated out of who they voted for and feel like their own government is actively seeking to undermine them. I think the consequences which follow are not to exaggerate, but the Second Amendment might be getting used for the purpose it was supposed to be there for.
Yeah, and God help us all that actually happens, because you would never want to see that. But at the same time, the point of the matter is that as president, you have the widest constituency base out of every elected official within the government, and so you are going to theoretically push these people out of the way and say that, no, you're just sore losers, and this is why. There's a video clip of Hillary Clinton in 2000, arguing in favor of Al Gore winning the election and saying that Bush won it illegitimately. Saying that, she wasn't going to accept the outcome of the 2000 election when George W. Bush 43 won.
I think especially that's a really good point, because the Bush-Gore election was insanely close.
Yeah.
The fact that it went on for 20 days after the election and took a Supreme Court decision to decide who actually won the election, and this may well happen in this cycle, and that's when it gets dangerous, because the Bush-Cheney campaign, as sort of, it wasn't an aggressive campaign at all, but it was a well pushed campain.
Well, it was a well manicured campaign.
Yeah, as a well manicured campaign, and they had the best lawyers. As good as that was, as good as that was, I mean, or as bad as that was from the Democratic point of view, that's completely irrelevant in the fact that if this happens now, we have Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and I don't think that a process could go forward like in 2000. I just can't see.
And I don't even see it, being at the court level. I see it being at, you have in 2016 you have a polarized campaign. you have two different camps that believe two completely separate things. And at this point in time, you know, the biggest factor in democracy, and if you look at the academics behind, you know, so like if you're doing some studies on democracies and doing polity scores, defining a democracy is similarly like an easy thing to do. However, the way that whenever you're doing revolutions and you're starting to measure at what point does democracy take hold, and the single biggest factor that academics have come up with is that the belief that the system works. And in 2016, do people honestly believe that the system works? I honestly believe that the system works, but does Joe Schmo, who just lost his coal mining job in North Carolina, and now a presidential nominee is saying that she wants to make more people like Joe Schmo, you know, without jobs, being in the coal mining industry.
That's definitely it. I feel like if you think you've already been robbed, it doesn't matter what the election, you're going to feel robbed anyway.
Yeah.
And it's the Joe Schmo mentioning the Michael Moore moment is that this election may be decided on those people who feel like they've lost everything that they had, and at this point they can just say fuck you to the rest of the world by going, I'm going to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
And then those people, at the point they lose is when they think the system is so far against people like me that I feel like I should do something about it.
Yeah, and going back, being, you know, the fun academic person that I am, is there's a big voter theory. Obviously, you have the median voter theory with campaigns and moving to the center, but I think the biggest idea is people being able to vote with their pocketbooks. People voting on how they see their neighbors' lives going, how they see their families' lives going. And if everybody around them is losing their job, is not as well off as they were 8 years ago or even 2 years ago, and that same party wants to implement those same policies or even more radical policies of that, even though they haven't voted in 16 years, they're going to go out and say, no, I've lost my money, I've lost my house, I've lost my car, my kids can't pay for school.
It's about time I do something about it.
And now I'm going to go out and vote. And I think that's what happens. But on that line, Ainsley's going to take a little bit of a different approach to the election and the polling numbers that are coming out. And
before that, I do want to mention an article from Washington Post. As unbiased as we know the Washington Post is.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Yeah.
This was it's in the it's going to be in the bibliography below, but one guy said that he personally has found in his research 31 individual cases of voter fraud, and says, tracking the allegations, even those that may end up disproven, can help calibrate an upper bound for the actual existing fraud that ID laws would stop. I'm a researcher, and so I'm interested in a thorough list. If you have credible information about a specific individual whose vote was stolen by an impersonator at the polls, please tell me. Specific and credible means just that. Not please examples like this, referring to, of course, anecdotal evidence. And if you have information about an incident below that indicates that it was an error rather than fraud, please tell me that as well. So at this point, to sort of wrap up this whole section on electoral fraud, is that there were 31 cases, and to most people that means 31 cases, who cares? But that's 31 too many. That's 31 times where the democratic process was just put to one side in favour of who people wanted it. You know, it can be very likened to what happened yesterday in Parliament, in the High Court rather, that the High Court has said Parliament must vote on whether or not to invoke Article 50. So they've basically said, well, the people of Britain have said this, but we don't actually care because that's not a legal vote.
Right.
What matters legally, and it happens to say it's the same thing in your constitution, legally it depends on the electors and not the electorate. So the people who actually go and, so say California has 55, etc.
Yeah.
Electors. What actually matters is the people at the top anyway. So you want to disenfranchise an entire nation, then 31 different occasions might not seem a lot to most people, but to me that's 31.
Well, yeah,
Too many.
it's 31 too many. But also, let's bring down this researcher from the Washington Post a little bit.
Oh yeah.
The point of his his sample size is 31. He's like, oh well, I personally know 31 people who have encountered voter fraud. Oh, cool. So the power of two. So let's go talk to the next person. I mean, he sits up in his ivory tower at this point, and it's going to be in our bibliography. So I off the top of my head, I don't know who the author of this.
From what I read, he found 31 out of 1,000 individual.
Cool.
cases.
So that's 3%, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's magnitude that 3% into
I will also add that those are 1,000 cases that people went forward and said we think electoral fraud has gone off here. But that like you're going to say,
yeah,
that's 3% of potential electoral fraud is actual electoral fraud.
Yeah, and just from his ambiguous, unscientific way of doing things,
and that's just in DC.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
exactly,
because we all know how much DC matters in the election.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, so now that we've put that on, and I kind of want to bring it back to that is that, that the common voter is not going to do the amount of research that we're doing. That we're interested in politics. I study politics profusely, and so does Ainsley. However, they will listen to the journalists, the politicians, and other that spout out that elections in the most fundamental democracy in the world are being presumed fake. So you see these articles that come out, by Fox News, by ABC, and by like the Yahoo at James Madison University. I mean, he signed up. How many people did he sign up? Those stories get out. And so what does it do? Does it make you want to go vote more? No, it makes you retract. The voting, we're going to go from, just being over 55% of those registered to vote actually vote last year to now, being well under 50.
I personally am not expecting a lot on Tuesday. I think we're going to see under 45% for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I think we were making a steady climb since 2004. A lot of people voted in 2004.
2004. It's usually the high turnouts usually happen after 4 years when people are really happy about the incumbent or really unhappy about the incumbent. So, for example, George H.W. Bush had got a high turnout because people were just generally unhappy with George H.W. Bush.
Well, no new taxes, and then he raises taxes. Yeah.
Reagan, for example, got a huge turnout in his second election, and George W. Bush got a huge turnout for his second election.
You have the rally around the flag effect, where we go in. The invasion of Iraq occurs in early 2003, and people are still excited about that.
Yeah.
At the end of 2003, thinking that we're going to decimate terrorism. And so you have that, and then you also have this outlier of the first black president ever voting, ever being up for vote.
And turnout was up, but it went down below George W. If I'm right, it went down below George W. Bush.
Really?
His first election in 2012. I think.
I don't have the numbers on that, but
because I think I'll have a quick. I'll come back to it later, but I'm pretty sure that just generally because people were. I think people were so excited in 2008 for the first, black president, and then there was a feeling of indifference in 2012. I think Romney could have easily won that election just as a point.
Terrible.
But yeah, to not go off tangent about past elections, just to say turnout was down 3.3%.
Wow.
In 2012, which is
that makes
large.
sense.
Yeah.
So after spending a good 10 minutes on this section,
I think it's about time we moved on to what we think is going to happen on Tuesday.
Yeah, and I think you're gonna shock everybody with that.
I'm gonna shock everyone, and I believe from what I've done, I do maths at uni. I like statistics, even though it's not the subject. I'm more of a physics and pure guy, but I still do like my statistics. I am going to say that no matter what the outcome in terms of the electoral vote, Trump will win the popular vote.
Yeah.
And having said that, I still think Trump is going to win the election overall. So in the UK general election last year, polling was all over the place. I mean, they were neck and neck for a long time. This is Labour and the Conservatives were neck and neck a long time before. But interestingly, the week leading up to the election, there was flip-flopping sort of between each party being up by 1 or 2%, and there was no sort of consensus.
Right.
The one interesting thing was the day before the election, so May the 6th, there was a poll done. This is all from Wikipedia, by the way. They do the polling data good.
Yeah,
we can trust them for that. They're just third-party polls, by the way. Which had a huge sample size of 18,000, got the right difference. So the Conservatives winning by 6 points,
right?
But they'd given the Greens too many, so both parties were actually up on what that poll was. But that was the day before, and they'd been polling that entire week. So there was this one. So obviously, what happened in that election was the Conservatives won easily.
Yeah. Easily.
The Conservatives won easily, and what people were saying was that there's this shy Tory factor. So one thing we can't equate is the fact that we have to remember that Hillary Clinton, for the most part, in theoretically, is the incumbent.
Yes.
In this election. She comes in as
it's a party incumbency.
Yeah, she's a party incumbent. So generally, what that means is the incumbency factor is something that can always be taken into account, especially with favourability less than 0. So one thing that you like, Reagan, for example, his favourability was stupidly high, so his incumbency factor you can't.
Yeah.
So he went up.
Yeah,
massively.
Exactly.
Whereas Obama definitely didn't go up.
No.
Because his favourability was around the 0 mark. So if you take into account the incumbency factor, and I think people are probably swinging away from the Democratic Party anyway. What'll be interesting actually is the Senate races and the House.
Yeah,
races.
and theoretically, I think the Republicans are going to take the Senate House.
They're gonna, I think they're gonna stay in control.
Which, I mean, they've been in control for what, the past
16
8 years,
16 years, I think, since 2000.
Wow.
So the incumbency factor might account for a slight swing away, but we'll probably already seen that in the polls anyway.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that the swing from the consensus poll, which I've said because of where everything was, that the average of Conservative and Labour in 2015 was they were both on 33, between 33 and 32 leading up. Obviously we had UKIP high, Green high, Lib Dem low, lol. I'm a Lib Dem, by the way. And what happened was there was a swing of 6%, so or 3%, depending on how you define swing. Of well, it was actually 1 in 16 people who said they were going to vote Labour actually voted Conservative, which is insane. So what I'm saying is, in this election, 1 in 16, approximately 1 in 16, and I think it might even be more because it's Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Especially for the people who, like, there's a lot of, I gather the feeling, like, this is not a fact-based thing, so I apologise, but I gather the feeling that, like, especially when you're talking to people, you don't want to say, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump.
Well, and that's also the factor as well. Like, if you look at the minority groups, so if you look at the African American sector and the Hispanic sector, obviously they've been viewed as being singled out by Donald Trump, and at times he has. I'm not gonna defend him on those, but at the same time, traditionally in the African American community, if you're voting Republican, if you're voting conservative, you're already going to be ostracized. And so if someone comes up to you, or even if the polling is being done, your polling is going to be off because you're surrounded by that community. But however, whenever you go in to vote, it's secretive. You don't have to tell anybody. You can just lie to them anyways. So you're going to vote with more of emotion on the day that you vote than during that polling time, because of that feeling of being ostracized by your community for voting against your community as it is perceived.
That's one important thing you say is on the day, and most people actually hear what pollsters have found here is most people decide on the day who they're going to vote for.
Yeah.
So all these people, speculation is fine, and there will be a lot of people who have already voted, or two will not shift from their vote.
No.
But that being said, a great deal of people do decide on the day. So interesting things I want to say about Trump is that states that I think he's going to win, that the consensus might not necessarily say he will, and there's a couple I want to add because of polling that came out in the last day or two.
Jeez, yeah.
So Maine overall is going to vote Democratic, but the 2nd district in Maine is really interesting, especially when you look at its demographics inside.
Right.
It actually has quite high support for Donald Trump up there. So I think the 2nd district of Maine will actually. So Maine is going to be like stripy blue and red.
Yeah,
it's only one electoral vote.
Exactly, but and I forget that we have Maine sometimes. Sorry, I really do love lobster, though. The fact of the matter is that I think what you're going to start seeing is a swing of constituency base. So, obviously, your lower educated people do vote conservative. I mean, it's statistically proven that it is that way.
And I don't think that'll ever change.
No, and I don't think that'll ever change. But it's also, you look at these people in Maine. Maine's not going to be a powerhouse financial district like New York, Pennsylvania, different things of that sort are. And so it is going to be your lower income white population that's going to be voting. And what have they seen? They've seen low jobs, their wages being taken away from them with higher taxes, and a lot of other things. And so that disparity is going to take place in Maine for this one electoral vote, which isn't that big of a deal, but it's Maine alone shows that constituency base is turning.
Well, it'll say a lot. If Maine's 2nd district does vote Republican, which I think it will, it says that it does exactly say a lot about that constituency base completely changing.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to bash Maine, but it has lots of old people.
Yeah, it does.
It's a lot of old, and obviously the elderly tend to vote conservative also.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
it has about the average rate of.
You know what had surprised me though is Donald Trump was up 0.7% over. I think it was 0.7. It might have been a little bit higher. I don't. This is if you go to Real Clear Politics and go look at. No, it wasn't Real Clear Politics. Who was it? It was ABC. It was an ABC article that kind of broke it down into. Here's the 18 to 34 vote. Here's 35 to whatever, and then 65 plus. Donald Trump was beating Hillary in the 18 to 34 sector.
That was like this week.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Like 7 days.
And he wasn't just beating her barely; he was beating her by a lot. And obviously, when you go down to socioeconomics and different things like that, it's gonna stay pertinent to the traditional base that uneducated or lower educated people are voting conservative, rather than whenever you move up to graduate level people voting liberal. And obviously this is seen as social aspect voting liberal. I think there's still a lot of people that like yourself are voting based on economic standpoints as well.
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest thing, is that not only was he leading in a demographic that necessarily goes liberal, but he was beating her by a lot.
I think that one interesting thing as well is that here, young people on the left, so Labour voters, people who said they would be inclined to vote Labour in the millennial category, that 18 to 34, their turnout is just barely visible.
And we can talk about that too, like your turnout of, all the millennials who were all over the Bernie now where is the DNC for them? The DNC is not for them right now. Just like you see with me being mad at the GOP. The GOP is not me. I'm a conservative. I'm not a party kiss ass. And I think that's what you're going to see is that 18 to 34 vote on Tuesday is just going to be nil.
You're gonna see like almost no one's gonna be there.
Exactly. However, the 18 to 34 vote that is going to happen is going to be the Trump supporters who are going to say "fuck you" to the system, and they're going to say it with a massive amount of voter turnout.
But yeah, and one thing I would like to point out is that the 18 to 34s that are going to be voting Trump don't just think that they're morons or like the ones who left, who didn't even graduate high school. I think what we're going to see is college educated 18 to 34 year olds, especially ones who are still in college, and the more conservative colleges like A&M, where you graduated
where
from.
I did my undergrad at.
I genuinely believe that they will most likely be voting Trump more than Clinton still.
And I think right now with all the social things that have gone on in the past 2 years, legalizing of gay marriage, so that's not a voting factor anymore for them. For those people who are going to vote based on a social issue, because it's already there. Yeah. So now you're looking at it and you're like, okay, I need a job.
Yeah.
I mean, and so me especially, I need a job, and so that's what they're going to be voting on that standpoint now. Yeah, and there's going to be that 18 to 34 vote that's voting for free college and all that crap. But at the same time, people right now, the 21, 22, 23-year-old people that are getting out of college and want a job, need a job, see these high unemployment numbers, and if people will comment on this and write back that the unemployment is under 5%, BS, because there's a lot of factors that come into play for that within the media, and they're not looking at a lot of different things, and obviously the economy looks a lot better right before an election. It's saying right now that 4.9%. It's the most BS thing I've ever heard in my life. It's upwards probably around 10 or 12%. They need jobs. They don't feel like they can get one, and so that's why the 18 to 34 vote this year is going to go to the Republicans, I think.
We personally think anyway.
Yeah, we personally think.
If
I'm not, our show on Wednesday on my birthday will point out that we were wrong.
Yeah,
we'll point out that we were wrong.
But I don't think we'll have to. I don't think we'll have to say that.
I think the 18 to 34 vote is going to the Republicans.
I think one thing to just to say now, which is probably the most controversial thing, is that at this point, I think we would both. I support Gary Johnson, but I'm realistic. He's not going to win.
Yeah, what is he at? 7%, holding steady at 5, maybe.
He's between 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, and then Jill Stein over there with 0.7%.
At this point, because of what we know about Clinton now, I hesitate to say, but I think I would rather Trump win over Hillary.
Yeah, and I'll probably go into some like theoretical, organizational based like structures on Wednesday about that. On why, if he does win, why I think he's a good candidate, why he's a good and malleable candidate for the presidency, and why I think like those in Washington, the National Security Council, those advisors that he's going to be taking on, will kind of put him in a place, and we can get onto that on Wednesday. What I want to revert back to, which I found this past week, I think it was on Tuesday, the ABC poll that I mentioned earlier that had Trump leading Hillary by +1, which is in the margin of error, but still, I mean, he was down by 6 or 7 earlier that week.
Well, 9 days before he was down 11. He
was down 11. Okay, however, I think the biggest takeaway from the article, and we have it in our bibliography, is which the poll was done by the Langer Research Associates, is the last chart on that article, showing the voter preferences across states. This divided 3 separate categories: Democrat-leaning, Republican-leaning, and the toss-ups. In the Democrat-leaning states, that they had categorized, like California, that was definitely going to go to Democrats, or it was already Democrat-leaning traditionally, and in the polls at that point, had her favorability in that at 54% to 37%. However, when you look at Republican-leaning or solid Republican states, Trump is winning 60 to 34. In the toss-ups, Trump is beating Clinton 48% to 41. So, just to do a little math real quick, 60 minus 34 is what? 16? 26?
26.
26. Yeah, I'm not good at math, guys. I don't need it for my degree, really. And then, 54 minus 37
17.
is 17. So her difference in winning these leaning Democratic states, or these solid Democrat, is only 17%, whereas his is 26, and has probably gone up even more, now that he's gone +1 in New Hampshire. And I think Real Clear Politics had him today at 1.5 throughout their average
In New Hampshire.
And of course the LA Times has him up like +5 or +6, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think the disparity in that. But you being a statistician, I think you know.
We're at a point where we're at just like chaotic data, where it just at this point the data set is so far all over the place that we don't really know what's going on. Although raw data still suggests Trump's going to win, in my opinion, from what I've done with the math.
I think he will.
And I think he will too.
Yeah. So the last point of this section, this election section, we're looking at Director Comey of the FBI, reopening the Clinton investigation. And we have a link to that. We have a link to the letter that he sent to both Republican and Democratic leaders in Congress. That because just like the left loves to leave out stuff. The Clinton campaign. The Clinton campaign forgot to flip the page. Comey sent out a 2-page letter. Yeah, the first page, had the Republican leaders and the letter, and then on the back side of the page, it had those leaders from the Democratic Party in the Senate.
Did you get this is just one other thing about Hillary Clinton. Like, she just blatantly lied.
Yeah, it wasn't even just her. It was so there's a disparity of like 5 hours after this letter comes out. She the Wi-Fi on the plane doesn't work for some stupid reason. Because the media is traveling with her. And then Podesta comes out and writing a letter, criticizing Comey for only sending it to Republicans. And 3 hours after Podesta writes that letter, she's speaking on the campaign trail and says the same exact thing that Podesta had outlined, which is just blatantly false. And that's not, and yes, we might seem like we're just attacking her because we don't like her, which I think she's not the best candidate ever or person, regardless. But the point of the matter is that we would be attacking Donald Trump with the same amount of fervor if he would have just blatantly left out the backside of a freaking page.
Yeah, it's just like
that was such a bombshell. It wasn't like that. This was 6 months old and she's talking about dodging sniper fire in Bosnia, or it's just this is a huge standpoint, being 11 days out from the election when that letter was sent.
This is especially what comes out of this. I mean, we're probably not going to see anything between now and Tuesday. Nothing's going to happen. But indictment could happen, and there's a potential she'll be immediately impeached if she wins.
Yeah, two people in the same family being impeached by Congress. How about that? So I think the biggest thing is on Friday, October 28th, Director Comey sent a bipartisan letter to Democratic and Republican leaders in Congress stating that the pertinent information came up in connection to the previous investigation conducted on the Clinton email server, which was concluded in August of 2016, or this year. Now it has come to light that more than 650,000 emails have been found on a computer linked to Weiner and his ex-wife, Huma Abedin, a longtime friend and aide of Hillary Clinton. How about that? Weiner just being a wiener.
Hey.
I think this is NBC reports that law enforcement officials confirmed that investigators gained permission to start trawling, that's a weird word to use, through 650,000 emails discovered on the laptop Sunday evening. thousands of them could be from Clinton's private server. During this time, whenever we were writing this and whenever we were kind of going through that, these 650,000 emails were presumed to be duplicates or copies of those already skimmed or already found. However, this week it's been known that no, these are brand new emails.
Yeah, this is new information, and it's going to take a long time to go through it.
Exactly.
650,000 emails that these guys have to look through every single one of them to make sure.
Yeah.
I at this point believe that the FBI are building a case against Clinton. At this point,
I think they're building a case against the Clinton Foundation, especially with what the FBI Vault on Twitter started dumping a bunch of documents about a Clinton investigation in 2001, 2001.
Like that, yeah.
And I think it's just come to a point of now that they know that all officials are on the chopping block. If you're going to straight out defy American democracy, if you're going to straight out defy and act like you're an untouchable in the American community, no, you're going to be after. The FBI is going to come after you, and I think that's a very good thing for Harry Reid of all people, dear God. Harry Reid comes out and wrote an open letter to Comey saying, "Your actions in recent months have demonstrated a disturbing double standard for the treatment of sensitive information with what appears to be clear intent to aid one political party over another," the letter says. "I am writing to inform you that my office has determined that these actions may violate the Hatch Act." So Harry Reid, of all people, who just so happens to lose millions of dollars of campaign funds, and it happens to go to his daughter. He's worried about the Hatch Act and sensitive information and everything like that. But 3 months ago, he was all over Comey. He was all over. He's just a great guy. He's so well rounded, and he needs to be in this position. But whenever Comey actually finds out more information and is being a better investigator, or obviously not himself investigating, he doesn't do that, but those below him are investigating.
I think what's one thing that's just slightly important to just butt in here is that the GOP is also on the wrong side of Comey, where they were in the same position 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So the GOP are not getting they're not getting a pass card here. They also are guilty of the same thing. They're guilty.
Yeah, they're guilty of the same thing. The GOP acted stupidly. However, I think if the GOP did not, especially Trey Gowdy, did not sit on these emails and keep harping and keep going and keep going and keep going, I don't think it would be as big of a bombshell now. I don't think the FBI, in the lower level would be as upset, because it wouldn't have been such a big deal. I mean, if you look at this stuff, that Trey Gowdy had been on this case for over a year. And the FBI finally got involved and, 3 months ago made their decision. If he had not been on that for such a long period of time, I don't think it would have been as big of a deal. It wouldn't have been as big of a bombshell, and we wouldn't have found out the things that, WikiLeaks has released, I think
that's one thing. We're grateful to Trey Gowdy for a lot of things.
Yes.
But he's held the course of justice here.
So to kind of wrap up this section, I think the biggest thing is that Hillary Clinton and the liberal camp and a lot of the news media, except for lately, because now they want to be on the winning side. I don't know why. The problem wasn't ever the Hillary email server being the sole problem, which it was illegal and it was wrong, and she shouldn't have ever done that. The problem is the other illegal activity that was hidden within that server, the pay-to-play scheme that's being investigated now, as well as the sole harm to American national security. It came out the other day that it's 99% sure that the FBI believes that foreign agencies, more than 5 foreign agencies, intelligence agencies, had hacked into the Clinton server.
Yep.
And people are like, well, what does that matter? There was nothing on there. No, there were a lot of stuff on there. There's a lot of sensitive information there. Whether it be confidential or top secret or secret level security clearance that is needed to view those documents, TSSCI, that's a big deal. Those are being Secretary of State was used to be viewed as one of the top positions within the White House, top positions within the U.S. government.
If not, it still is.
If not, it still is.
Yeah.
And so, not only is it, what's going on in the world, but there are also intelligence briefs that are given to the Secretary of State. One of, the biggest intelligence communities takes part within the State Department. Uh-huh. And the Secretary of State is briefed on that. And if any of that information fell into the hands that it wasn't supposed to be in, that is a clear sign that national security of the United States was harmed.
Yeah, and
because it wasn't on a secure server,
and she knew that, and I think that's the thing, is that she knowingly breached what she has done
for political gain. Yeah,
for political gain. What she has done is people have gone to prison for a long time for far less.
Yeah.
This is when we're not talking about people trivializing this as using the wrong email account. This is a serious breach of United States security protocol.
Yeah.
This is like major. And this is probably the only time you're ever going to get me vouching for Donald Trump, is the fact that when people say, well, Donald Trump's, even though the emails, right, but Donald Trump is still a racist, he's still a sexist, he's still a homophobe, he's still anti-immigration. Well, okay, what's Donald Trump done? Okay, he made the ridiculous notion of the wall.
Yeah. He's okay. Absolutely out of line there. It's never going to work.
Yeah, he's just that's just bad, and it goes back on what one of my heroes, George W. Bush, tried to get immigration easier back in his day, and which commendable effort didn't get passed. Is he a racist? I don't think so. I do not. There's no grounds in him being racist.
I don't think somebody wins, a civil rights medal with Rosa Parks and is a racist.
Yeah,
just kind of throwing that out there. I mean, like we said, we don't. From an international relations standpoint, don't think that Donald Trump would represent our country very well. I don't think that his ideas are great at all. But the fact of the matter is that this has been so skewed for so long. I mean, this election has gone on. For almost 2 years. Yeah, it's almost 2 years
since Trump basically announced he was running for president.
And so it's given so much time to mess up, to have things skewed, and now the media wants to come back 7 days before an election and say, "Oh, we were wrong." That's just so terrible. I think
I've always since I knew Hillary Clinton was running, the prospect of that has always been so. In my mind, so dangerous and so scary that no matter who she was running against, I was gonna probably hope they beat her. But just to finish off what I was saying, the whole Donald Trump saying just grab him right in the pussy, that is incredibly demeaning to women.
Yeah.
But it was said on a bus where he had no idea. People don't understand what other people say behind closed doors.
Right.
And Donald Trump said grab him right in the pussy. Bill Clinton had affairs in the fucking White House.
Yeah.
And no one's talking shit about him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Donald Trump might not respect women, and that's terrible in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's an abhorrent thing to do. But him saying grab him right in the pussy, it's kind of funny really, because that is him just saying words, and I don't condone those words.
No.
But I genuinely don't think Donald Trump acts like that.
No.
And I think he just says that to look the big. Don't like Shapiro says, he's just a big swinging set of balls.
Well, yeah, and I mean, God, for how ugly he is as well, I think he has to try and obviously use his money and use his influence to seem better than he really is, and at the end of the day, I think he just says that he wants to be part of the cool crowd, when in reality, those like Mark Cuban and other billionaires that are in that crowd that are so much cooler than he is, kind of like set him off to the side. I mean, he's like the ugly stepchild, and I fully agree with you on saying that, like, he's using those actions back in the day to make himself seem cooler than he really was. I mean,
he's still trying that now.
Yeah.
He's trying. I think he's still trying to. He doesn't feel like people are accepting him so he's running for fucking president.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, whatever happens. There's nothing anybody can do about it. So Donald Trump being a racist, sexist, homophobe, even if he is those things, misogynist, whatever.
Yeah.
If he's going to be president, he won't be allowed to act like that.
No, he won't, and
So-
he'll be criticized greatly. And I think after 4 years,
He'll be gone.
he'll be gone. The Republican Party is going to get it together. I think. Oh, God. I don't think they'll ever get it together, but I think they'll have someone such as Trey Gowdy, such as Paul Ryan, who's going to run against Donald Trump and just blow him out of the water.
I personally like Rand Paul.
Yeah.
I liked his dad.
Yeah. God, Ron Paul. Yeah,
Ron
I enjoy
Ron Paul 2020.
Ron Paul's like watching Red Eye at night. It's
He's
it's
clinging
informative and funny, but at the end of the day, it's not going to change anybody's minds.
I think we should move on. Where this section has gone on for a while.
Yeah.
To wrap up, I guess.
So I've got to leave soon, but yeah, I think we just do that one section. Do we?
Leave it at that.
Yeah, we just do. That was our opening. We talk about the election. We give closing statements. Done for the first podcast. The next podcast
We'll feed this information back in.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, we'll do our closing statements then. I'm just gonna free run my closing statement.
Yeah. Do you want to go first on the closing statement? Or do you want me to?
I started, so you
Okay.
give it last. Yeah.
So to wrap up today, obviously we just were able to cover the election, who we were, and our goals for this podcast, and I think that was very pertinent to do that. My closing statement today would be for those of you who feel disenfranchised by this election, who feel like they have been ostracized by whichever group they're being a part of, or anything of that sort, is to do your own homework, to go out to find these things. I always reflect on it, studying politics as an undergrad and studying international relations and security now, is that this is what I do every day, and I still don't know enough.
Yeah.
And so I always hurt and I feel kind of led to help people out that just theoretically don't have the time or don't have the will to do it. And I think that's what we're trying to get away with this podcast, is to kind of like break it all up and show you and kind of bring the sources to you. And so what I say is, this week, if you haven't early voted, if you didn't, mail in your ballot, if you're going to vote on Tuesday, learn. Do a crash course, learn, look at the polls, look at the policies, stop, seeing what Donald Trump says to Hillary Clinton, what Hillary Clinton says to Donald Trump. We're not voting for a prom queen this year. We are voting for the leader of the free world.
Yes.
We are voting for someone to lead this country into, the middle part of the 21st century. And I think doing your homework and finding these sources will be a huge help in that. So vote with your head, not your emotions, please.
So my closing words are probably going to run off from Cody's, in the fact that for those of you in the United States, do your homework for one. But if you're going to vote for Donald Trump, that you're freely allowed to do that. Yeah, that doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't corrupt you morally. It doesn't mean you hate people. It doesn't mean you hate the poor. And you know that for yourself, right? But people are going to say that to you anyway. If you're going to vote for Hillary Clinton, I also don't care. People are going to say, well, you're supporting a crooked regime, whatever. If you've done your own homework and you've come to that decision, I think that is a fair choice. If you want to vote with your conscience and not vote for either, you can look at Gary Johnson or Jill Stein, or if you live in a state where Evan McMullin is on the ballot, you can vote for him. You can also vote for like Natural Law or the Socialist Party. What?
Do we even have, Bernie Sanders isn't on the ballot. We don't have a socialist.
But there aren't just these two candidates. You can also actively not vote, and I'm not going to blame people for not voting in this election, especially because the choices are so bad. However, when it comes to Tuesday, and you know the result, and if you feel bad about what the result is, you only know yourself how you voted, and you know yourself if you voted for the winner and the winner turns out to be bad, and you voted for that winner knowing the terrible things you know about that candidate, then you know that in hindsight. So what I will say is just try and vote with your conscience. Don't let other people tell you how to vote. Don't let other people bully you into how to vote. At the end of the day, as Michael Moore said, your vote is worth the same as literally everybody else's. And I just want to end by saying, doesn't matter how you vote or if you don't vote, you contribute to the democratic process anyway. Thanks.
Thanks for watching our first episode.
Yep, thank you.
We're hopefully going to have one out every Wednesday. If you come back in, I think we're going to try and have like a Facebook Live for the election.
Yep.
So, we're a little rusty on this. Obviously, this is our first episode, but we hope you enjoyed what we had to talk about, and we hope that you enjoy looking at the sources and the transcript that we are going to provide.
Yep.
So,
thanks for watching the Frontline podcast, and we'll see you next Friday, I guess.
Yeah. Adios.
Adios.